Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Donald Trump is now the President of the United States. In a day of carefully choreographed ceremony, he was sworn in on Capitol Hill an hour ago in front of hundreds of thousands of people gathered to witness a moment many Americans have longed for, many have dreaded. In his inauguration speech, he pledged to put America first, to protect American families, jobs and borders. There were some protests, and just a few blocks away from the ceremony, shops and car windows were smashed. In the last half hour, the Obamas left Washington for the last time on board an official helicopter. Our North America correspondent Nick Bryant is in Washington and takes us through the inauguration.
The day dawns, the page turns, and so begins a new and unexpected chapter in the epic story of America. This famed house has been the home of Lincoln, Roosevelt, Jefferson and Kennedy, but few predicted that Donald Trump would ever become its tenant. America's capital filled up with his supporters, the forgotten people he called them, voters who believe that Washington is broken and needs a businessman, a political outsider to fix it.
It means a lot for history. It means a lot for our country. To respect our president, to see a new time.
Something to experience.
But rarely has a winning candidate been so hated. By opponents who view him as racist, sexist, a hot-headed demagogue.
3 million other Americans voted for Hillary, and she won the presidency, and she should be our next president. And I think a lot of people are upset with the person that's coming into office and what he represents.
Much of the capital was in lockdown, a modern-day fortress. The billionaire began his day in a house of prayer, accompanied by his wife, daughters and sons, America's new family firm. As President-elect Trump was in church, some contemplative moments too for Barack Obama, as he vacated the Oval Office, leaving behind a letter for his successor on the desk. Then he made his way to the most prized real estate in the land, 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue.
Mr. President Wood, how are you?
Never has there been such a difference in personality and policy between an outgoing and incoming president. But America prides itself on the peaceful transfer of power, and what could be more civil than coffee and a chat at the White House?
I'm always open minded.
Barack Obama claimed throughout the campaign that Donald Trump was unfit to be president. But this is the people's house, and in the states that mattered, the voters decided otherwise. These protesters were determined to make it a violent transfer of power, smashing windows in downtown Washington, not far from the parade route. But they couldn't impede the final stretch of the most improbable journey in modern-day American history, as a billionaire businessman who's never held elected office travelled down Pennsylvania Avenue for his swearing in on Capitol Hill. Already there was Hillary Clinton, who'd hoped this day would be hers. But even though she got more votes, she was here as a spectator, watching what must have been the most painful of pageants. But really big-name stars have stayed away, so too more than 50 Democratic lawmakers who boycotted the ceremony. And the crowds on the National Mall were much smaller than those that greeted Barack Obama 8 years ago. Hail to the Chief rang out for Barack Obama one last time as he entered the final minutes of his 8-year presidency. And one sensed a feeling of demob happiness, even though this wasn't the way he wanted to end his presidency. Then came the entrance of the man now taking centre stage. his inaugural show, ushering in a very new reality. He read from a script written by America's founding fathers, the presidential oath of office.
I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully execute
that I will faithfully execute
the office of President of the United States
the office of President of the United States
and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend
the
Constitution of the United States.
The Constitution of the United States.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, Mr. President.
35 simple words that many thought he'd never get to utter. Words that made him President Donald Trump. The gun saluted America's new commander-in-chief, the man now in charge of the world's most feared military, and also the US nuclear arsenal. Donald Trump was written off as a joke when he first announced his candidacy for the White House, but now he's become America's 45th president, and they'll be talking about this moment for centuries to come. Then came his inaugural address, a speech that sets the tone for a presidency, a speech which he intended to define the Trump era.
Because today, we are not merely transferring power from one administration to another, or from one party to another, but we are transferring power from Washington, D.C., and giving it back to you, the people. Mothers and children trapped in poverty in our inner cities, rusted out factories scattered like tombstones across the landscape of our nation, an education system flush with cash, but which leaves our young and beautiful students deprived of all knowledge, and the crime, and the gangs, and the drugs that have stolen too many lives and robbed our country of so much unrealized potential. This American carnage stops right here and stops right now.
He'd written a fiercely nationalistic speech, echoing his campaign rhetoric about putting America first.
We assembled here today are issuing a new decree to be heard in every city, in every foreign capital, and in every hall of power. From this day forward, a new vision will govern our land. From this day forward, it's going to be only America first. America first.
And then his finale, the slogan that helped him win the presidency.
We will make America strong again. We will make America wealthy again. We will make America proud again. We will make America safe again. And yes, together, we will make America great again. Thank you, God bless you, and God bless America. Thank you.
And then it was time for the former president to leave town. Mindful, no doubt, that Donald Trump and a Republican-controlled Congress will try to demolish some of his signature achievements, but powerless now to stop them. The ground has shifted dramatically in Washington, and the reverberations will be felt across America, around the world. The country is now run by the most unconventional and unpredictable of modern American presidents. The day that many hoped for, the day that many feared, has now come. Nick Bryant, BBC News, Washington.
Thousands of Trump supporters travelled from across America to witness his inauguration. But there have also been some demonstrations and violence, with protesters voicing their anger against the new president. Our correspondent James Cook has been with the crowds on the National Mall in front of Capitol Hill throughout the day and sent this report.
In the darkness of a winter morning, the people are on the march. They've come to their nation's capital in the heart of winter, determined to renew their country, to restore their republic, to its glory days. And the man for that job, they insist, is Donald J. Trump.
I think it's going to bring a new era of hope and prosperity for our country.
Why did you come out so early?
I wanted to make sure that we got towards the front of the line and got in time because there's tons of people here, so I wanted to beat the rush.
We're just here to support our president. We're so happy that he's been elected, and we're looking forward to what the future brings, that he brings to our economy and bringing jobs back to America.
Well, Donald Trump's supporters have been queuing here for hours to cheer on a man they regard as a political revolutionary. But his opponents are here too, with a very different message.
Hey, hey! Ho, ho! Donald Trump has got to go! Hey, hey! Ho, ho!
Before President Trump even started his new job, though, his approval ratings were stunningly low. Polls suggest millions of Americans don't just oppose him, they despise him.
When immigrant communities are under attack, what do we do? Stand up, fight back!
In particular, these protesters fear that Mr. Trump will deport immigrants en masse and that he'll single out Muslims and Mexicans for ill treatment.
When women are under attack, what do we do? Stand up, fight back!
They also accuse the new commander-in-chief of sexism, even of sexual assault, which he has denied.
I believe that Donald Trump is not normal, that he is a threat to democracy, that he is an imminent threat to our republic and at least to our civil discourse and to the civil norms that we've grown accustomed to.
I'm here today because I think it's important that the American people come out and show that we don't support Trump's inauguration, we don't support Trump as president, and we don't support America's descent into fascism. So I'm here to show my dissent, and I will continue to engage in that dissent for the next 4 years.
Go on, sir.
It's a bunch of bull.
Why is that? Why is that?
Because it's not true.
Well, which bit's not true?
He's a racist and he's against free speech. That's not true.
From debate to division to disturbances on the streets. As President Trump was sworn in, the seething anger at his election boiled over. A country both hopeful and despairing, joyous and bitter. In short, two countries. James Cook, BBC News, Washington.
Well, let's talk to our North America editor, John Soper, who's just by Capitol Hill in Washington. John, Donald Trump's inauguration speech aimed clearly at his supporters. But to quote his words, is it America first or America alone?
Well, I think the thing, Fiona, I've learned about covering Donald Trump these past 18 months is he's difficult to pigeonhole. On one level, it sounded like a completely isolationist America speech that he delivered. I think it would be better to put it in terms of economic nationalism. He wants American jobs, he wants people to buy American and hire American. But if you listen to what he was saying about, for many decades, America has enriched foreign industry, subsidized foreign militaries, defended foreign borders and not our own, you can see that the focus is on foreign countries having to stump up more, and America is not going to subsidize them, and he is going to try to rewrite the rules on trade. I should imagine in governments around the world, they know what the drift of policy is going to be. They're going to try to work out exactly what that will mean in practice. But make no mistake about it, Donald Trump wants action now, and he wants the focus to be just about the American people, and if the rest of the world are disappointed by that, that's the way it's going to be.
And John, you've been watching events there all day on this most unusual handover of power from one president to another. What have your impressions been?
You know, the thing that has really struck me is, yes, there's ceremonial, yes, this is a kind of great pageant, but it's also personal. I mean, I just wondered what Hillary Clinton was thinking as she had to smile benignly on that podium a few meters away, thinking it could have been me. Barack Obama seemed to be walking more lightly, smiling, as if his kind of the burden of office had been lifted, whereas you looked at Donald Trump and you thought, goodness me, he really does have the future of the world on his shoulders now, and that weight seemed to be bearing heavily.
John in Washington, thank you. Well, the eyes of the world are on Washington today as thoughts turn to the kind of president Donald Trump will be. His controversial statements on Russia, NATO, China and the Middle East have already made waves. And there have been hints that the UK may benefit from a swift trade deal with the new administration. Our diplomatic correspondent James Robbins assesses the likely global impact of the Trump presidency.
The world really is watching. Billions of people sharing the ceremonial transfer of power, perhaps the most astonishing in history. Across every continent, people trying to figure out what it could mean for them.
Le 45e président américain.
Everywhere, Donald Trump polarizes opinion. In Britain, protesters have been out in several cities. The Brexit vote first divided the country, then increased Donald Trump's belief he could win.
I, Donald John Trump.
Republicans abroad are holding a party in London. They acknowledge he drew strength from Britain's radical decision to overturn the status quo.
Mrs. Theresa May.
The Prime Minister, selling her vision of Brexit this week, expects to meet President Trump soon. An anti-EU president seems willing to do an early trade deal with Britain. But does his isolationism also threaten Britain's wider global interests? In public today, the Chancellor sounds upbeat.
We have a deep and enduring relationship between the UK and the US, and because it is so deep and so complex, it will prosper, and I'm quite confident of that in the future.
But Britain certainly does not share the Trump view of Russia, particularly if the new president does actively favour Vladimir Putin over NATO and the EU. Ukraine is a real test. Does Mr. Putin feel his intervention there will now cost him less in future? That Donald Trump could soft pedal on sanctions, favouring partnership rather than punishment? And what about Syria? Barack Obama allowed Russia to take control there. The new president could step back still further from the Middle East.
Russia and President Putin has repeatedly said that he is ready to move the dialogue with Washington into constructive mode.
Donald Trump's deal-making will really be put to the test over international trade, especially with China. Trump, the candidate, demonized China as the destroyer of American jobs. Will he now risk a trade war of escalating tariffs with China? Or will Trump as president be more conciliatory and conventional across a whole range of issues?
I'm afraid that international affairs are messy and complex. I suspect that if Trump clings to that I win and you lose kind of mentality, that will cause problems.
So, on this Inauguration Day, if global anxiety could be measured, would it be off the scale right now? The new president has it in his power to soothe his opponent's worst fears. But can he do that without betraying his supporters' best hopes? James Robbins, BBC News.
Where today the new president of the United States was sworn in, and where tonight, without question, American politics has entered a new era. It was ushered in by Donald Trump with an inauguration speech that frankly stunned his audience and no doubt the rest of the world. On the very steps of the Capitol, he began with a full frontal assault on Washington itself, pledging to take power away from the elite and hand it back to the American people. Then he fleshed out his theme. America first, he said, and then only America first, just in case we hadn't entirely got the point. Isolationism, protectionism, and nationalism seem to be the underlying message. And if Mr. Trump means what he says, and America stepping back from its global role politically, militarily, economically, to take care of its own fortunes, then many of the world's old certainties could be called into question, and rapidly. The inauguration of the 45th president promised change. The question now is where that change might lead.
The transfer of power began with the uncomfortable ritual of a shared ride in the presidential limousine, travelling a short distance from the White House to Capitol Hill. The crowds along Pennsylvania Avenue were small, and that this presidency will be divisive could be heard as well as seen. The west side of the Capitol was ready for the inauguration of Donald Trump, one of the most improbable political ascents this country has ever seen. One guest here had to steel herself to attend. Hillary Clinton exhaling as she tried to mask what must be her profound dismay. Trump has gone from being a conspiracy theorist and reality TV star to America's 45th president.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President-elect of the United States, Donald John Trump.
A minute before noon, surrounded by his family, his hand on two Bibles, his own and Abraham Lincoln's.
I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear
he took the oath of office.
that I will faithfully execute
the office of President of the United States
the office of President of the United States
and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States.
The Constitution of the United States.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, Mr. President.
His inaugural address was a striking display of populism, far more a campaign speech than a call for unity.
January 20th, 2017 will be remembered as the day the people became the rulers of this nation again. For many decades, we've enriched foreign industry at the expense of American industry, subsidized the armies of other countries while allowing for the very sad depletion of our military. We've defended other nations' borders while refusing to defend our own. We will seek friendship and goodwill with the nations of the world, but we do so with the understanding that it is the right of all nations to put their own interests first.
Then came the coded phrase that hints of an isolationist America and the biggest rupture in U.S. foreign policy since the 1940s.
From this day forward, it's going to be only America first. America first.
The president called this moment the hour for action.
Together, we will make America strong again. We will make America wealthy again. We will make America proud again. We will make America safe again. And yes, together, we will make America great again. Thank you, God bless you, and God bless America. Thank you.
There were no concessions to the fact that he lost the popular vote. And then through the halls of Congress, Donald Trump escorted his successor out of Washington. At this point, with Obama no longer president, the designation of the helicopter was switched from Marine One to Executive One. What must Barack Obama have been thinking, knowing that his domestic reforms are about to be reversed and his foreign policy dismantled? Back out! Outside of the security cordon, protests were breaking out on the streets of the Capitol. Many groups on the left are vowing never to accept the legitimacy of this president. Amid the skirmishes, more than 100 people were arrested.
This one I'm signing quite a few times, folks.
Inside Congress, Trump was wielding for the first time his presidential pen. These were token bills. But on Monday, there is likely to be a cascade of controversial executive orders, certain to disturb his domestic and foreign critics.
I assume he was approved.
On his way to the White House, as is tradition, The president stepped out of the car nicknamed the Beast, and he walked a few hundred meters. His young son Barron was next to him, and they were joined by the new First Lady Melania. What a life journey she has had, growing up in Slovenia, and now finding herself one of the most scrutinized women in the world. The reaction from the crowd was a mix of applause and jeers. Merely a taste of what lies ahead. One president has left. This was his nostalgic last look at the White House. And now America is in the hands of a different leader, with an agenda that is wildly unpredictable. Robert Moore, News at 10, Washington.
So, no conciliation from Mr. Trump, but a speech that, if anything, was an even tougher version of those he made on the campaign trail. The difference is, as president, his words may now point directly to official US policy for at least the next 4 years. America First was the overarching slogan, but he used some form of the word protect or protection no less than 7 times. He promised to protect jobs, to buy American and hire American. On trade, he said we must protect our borders from other countries damaging the US economy. He promised protection from immigration as well. One of the first announcements out of the new White House tonight was that he is still committed to building a border wall with Mexico. He said America is protected by its military, but criticized once again how they have defended other nations' borders, harking back to his campaign theme that America's allies should pay more towards their own defense. But America's defense was a priority straight after the speech, the White House announcing development of a new state-of-the-art missile system to protect against attacks from Iran and North Korea. There was really only one sentence in the whole speech in which he offered any kind of partnership with people and places outside of America's borders, when he pledged to unite the civilized world against radical Islamic terrorism. To do that, he said he'd reinforce old alliances and form new ones. It's probably fair to assume Britain is among those old alliances, and that by new ones he means Russia. Well, let's go back to our Washington correspondent Robert Moore now, who's at our bureau a few rooftops away. Robert, so often inaugural speeches in American history have been a chance to unify the country. How shocking did you find his speech today?
Well, look, if you cover Donald Trump, you expect to be a little bit surprised. You don't necessarily expect to be stunned. And I have to be honest with you, Tom, I'm a little bit stunned here tonight. It struck me that this was, as you've reported, a full-throated kind of protectionist, isolationist, even nationalistic speech. You know, what struck me is I've heard this speech many, many times before in small towns on the prairies, in sort of schoolhouses in New England, in big halls in the deep south. In other words, this was classic Trump on the campaign trail. And now he's president and he hasn't made the pivot that many people anticipated. It asks pretty profound questions about America's international role, about the role of NATO, about free trade and even the transatlantic relationship. And there were so many ironies in this. You know, he spoke about returning power to the people, and yet this is the president who lost the popular vote. He spoke about how the super wealthy have exploited the poor, and yet, of course, his cabinet is full of billionaires.
So how, in the end, do you think this will have gone down across America and indeed the world tonight?
Well, look, if you're living in sort of the Rust Belt in the Midwest, in impoverished Appalachia, for example, you might be thrilled. This is the man you voted for. This is the disruptor in chief. If you're African American or if you're Hispanic, there was not much recognition of your struggles or your aspirations. And if you're looking at this kind of overseas, you have to recognize this is a rupture, this is a rift. If you're living in the Baltic states or Germany, you might be disturbed. If you're living, or if you're the leader of Russia or China, you might see a gigantic vacuum into which you can step.
Okay, Robert, for now at least, thank you very much indeed. Well, Donald Trump would be the first to admit he can be a polarizing figure, so it was inevitable his inauguration would be met with protests, some of which turned violent. So far, 100 people have been arrested in skirmishes between police and some protesters. Police had to use smoke grenades and tear gas as shop windows were smashed and cars damaged. Thousands of others, however, gathered peacefully to harness the power of protest against the new president.
Donald J. Trump is now President of the United States. President Obama is the ex-president. And Mr. Trump, for the moment, steps away from the lectern.
As Donald Trump's oath of office was relayed down Pennsylvania Avenue in the square set aside for demonstration, some couldn't keep their emotions in.
How seismic a day is this for your country?
For their gracious aid.
I am so sorry to my world. I am so sorry to my world. This is not what we want.
As President Trump wrote a new chapter in his country's history, these people were united in their message, not in our name.
I started crying. I was in tears. I felt like it's a tragic, very tragic time for our country.
I felt like throwing up. It's probably the worst day of my life right now.
If you listen to the rhetoric that he espoused over the last few months and years, I mean, it just makes you worry about our country.
The anger and the defiance and the resistance being expressed by these people on Pennsylvania Avenue is shared by millions more across America. Unity in the United States seems a long, long way away.
Elsewhere in Washington, smaller, sporadic protests did spill over into violence. Police used pepper spray and stun grenades to control one crowd. After such a divisive campaign, these images will sadden, but perhaps not surprise America. Many here will fear there's more to come. But the prevailing mood among the vast majority of protesters was defiance rather than anger. Some chose to dance away their frustrations this afternoon. The message to their new president delivered loud and clear. We refuse to be silenced, and we're not going away. Martin Geisler, News at 10, Washington.
And Juliet Bremner is at a protest in Washington tonight. Juliet, it looks as if the skirmishes are continuing there.
Yes, very much so. You can probably hear the helicopter overhead. There are literally scores, hundreds, I would say, of police now down in this vicinity. And you can see some protesters that have already been detained who are being held behind me. They're being led off one by one, we presume under arrest. And then about a block away, they have fellow protesters who are still engaged in some kind of disruption. A short time ago, they set fire to a car, which was swiftly put out, but before that, it sent plumes of smoke up through the office blocks behind us. And actually, they are here. They are here at the moment trying to make their comments about what they see as a government that they do not want to come in power. They've gathered under something called #DisruptJ20, January the 20th, that is today. Somebody is actually shouting them at the moment that this is all lies. What they say is that there is no trouble down there, but certainly there has been smoke coming up into the sky, and there is a group of about 100 people who do not appear to want to disperse at this moment in time.
OK, Juliet, thank you very much indeed. Now, the divided opinion about Donald Trump didn't deter spectators from coming to watch the ceremony, though numbers were a little lower than some at least had anticipated. And all the same, 900,000 people are thought to have gathered in America's capital for the inauguration, friend and foe alike. We have, as a consequence, seen an unprecedented security operation, which Juliet was just talking about there, with 28,000 personnel on duty across the city. It is estimated in all the inauguration will have cost £165 million, around half of that on security. But President Trump enters the White House with one of the lowest approval ratings in history, just 42%. Mr. Obama's outgoing approval rating, by contrast, stands at 60%. Not that any of that dampened the pride of Mr. Trump's people, who turned out in their thousands to watch their man take charge.
For hardcore Trump supporters, today began before dawn. For them, this was the start of a hope-filled journey to a new day.
We need a change. Last 8 years have been a little rough.
Whee! And you too, you're on the Trump train?
Yes.
Why are you going to Washington?
To go see Trump get inaugurated.
Yeah. These buses driving from the Rust Belt of Pennsylvania to Washington are carrying Trump supporters who are counting on their new president to bring jobs and prosperity back to their towns.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America.
President Trump made his voters a promise, and today of all days his supporters have faith in him to keep it. So they're heading to their nation's capital to witness the day America belonged to them. Washington isn't the natural territory of Trump supporters. With its wide avenues, politicians and pundits.
To get to here, you need to come all the way down.
Down that way?
Even today, there was a sense of two worlds colliding as Middle America poured in to get a ringside seat at history. They've come here to see power transfer from one president to another. But for Trump supporters, something else is happening. Power, they feel, is transferring to them. But as it does so, the Pennsylvania visitors had to pass a smattering of anti-Trump protesters, a reminder that not all America is on their side.
What's your message to the other people here protesting?
They need to go home. We suffered for 8 years. They need to go home. I am hoping for it to make America great again.
Simple as that?
Yes.
Isn't it a bit more complicated?
There's a new sheriff in town.
In the end, the visitors failed to get close enough to see their hero straining to hear the moment he became their president from the loudspeakers at the Capitol. But they heard what they wanted, that America belongs to them.
I can't even describe how happy I am right now. It was a long road, but he and we did it together.
This was the day the Trump loyalists dreamed what others dreaded. But if those who believe in the new president are to keep the faith, Donald Trump must now start to deliver. Penny Marshall, News at 10, Washington.
Now, you may have heard the inauguration parade below me a short while ago. It's been going on for a long time. Mr. Trump was on it. Right now, he is returning to the White House. Some of his fans, supporters, officials, all there, of course, to welcome him into his new home. It's an interesting point that while they're up on Capitol Hill, the removal vans are actually moving all of the Trumps, or have been today, moving all of the Trump's furniture and belongings, so that when they come back into the White House, and certainly the private quarters tonight, it will, well, we assume, we're not in there, we're not flies on the wall, but we assume it will be something like home. But there, Mr. Trump, his wife, his daughter, and indeed all his family, in their new home for the next 4 years, America's new first family. Well, if that is the mood for and against here a moment ago, then what about the reaction around the world to this groundbreaking speech? Our Europe editor James Mates is in Moscow, our China correspondent Debbie Edwards is in Beijing, and from Downing Street in a moment, our political correspondent Libby Wiener. James, maybe I can start with you. I mean, one can only imagine, what did the Russians make of seeing this today?
Well, if it's alleged, Tom, that they had some hand in helping Donald Trump get elected, they will have been delighted that that rhetoric they enjoyed so much on the campaign trail is going with him straight into the White House. This was a speech that no American president has made since 1945, Democrat or Republican, and the Russians know that. The one particular line that from now on, all nations will take care of their own interests. That is precisely the Putin doctrine of how the world should work, particularly for big nations. When he says, we've been looking after other people's borders, not our own, we've been subsidizing their military, that speaks to his lack of confidence in NATO. And of course, NATO is precisely the thing that Putin would most like to get rid of. In Russian eyes, American internationalism all these years has been directed first at containing the Soviet Union and then more recently at restraining the Kremlin's attempts to re-establish Russian power. If those restraints are taken off, we are going to live in a very different world. And from a European point of view, we could now be living directly between the avowed, well-known nationalists here in the Kremlin to our east and the new nationalists to our west in Washington.
Okay, James, thank you very much indeed. Well, let's go over now to our China correspondent in Beijing, Debbie Edwards. Debbie, President Xi, is he bracing himself for a trade war at this point?
Well, that no longer seems like an unrealistic prospect, and it is one for which the Chinese government has been preparing. President Xi will have watched Donald Trump's inauguration speech tonight, fresh from the World Economic Forum in Davos, where he, a communist leader, was standing up for globalization and open trade. Tonight, it almost seems as if the leaders of the world's two top superpowers have reversed roles, with the new president of the United States talking about protectionism and a nationalist agenda. China does not want to be dealing with an inward-looking America or a president who has threatened it with punitive tariffs on Chinese goods. What the business community here in China is hoping that if, as Trump has said, everything is open for negotiation, then the businessman in him will recognize that he has to cooperate with Beijing for the benefit of both nations.
OK, Debbie, I suspect this is a flashpoint and a subject we'll be back to, but for now, thank you very much indeed. Let's go to Westminster and our political correspondent, Libby Wiener. Libby, the president's emphasis on putting America first, I'm not sure that's what Theresa May really wanted to hear at this point, is it?
Well, Tom, the Prime Minister put out a statement tonight congratulating Donald Trump, and she said in that statement that from her conversations with him, and we understand she's had 2 already on the phone, she believed that he was committed to advancing the special relationship. I also understand that she's likely to be the first foreign leader to visit him in the White House. But that said, I think that his inaugural address will have come as a rude shock to Mrs. May and many in her team. It was in stark contrast to the kind of language she was using just this week in Davos when she spoke to business leaders praising the virtues of free trade. I think one phrase stood out in Donald Trump's speech, that is, buy American, hire American. I think it's a little known fact that we actually have a huge trade surplus with America, that is, that we sell much more to them than they buy from us. And I think it's highly unlikely that when he said buy American, what he really meant was I'm going to do a lot to encourage people to buy British. I think it makes the chances of that much talked about special trade deal look a little less likely tonight.
OK, Libby, doesn't feel like particularly brilliant news for us, but let's see.